So, should we bring in the closer? And
I think it'd be a good time for that.
All right.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 73 of the Free Baseball Podcast presented by the Athlete Sub. My name is Davis Bird, and as always, I am joined by resident Californian man whose computer may or may not have exploded.
Good thing Crumpler. I have two.
Yeah. I say, how else would you be on this one? But it's Jake Crumpler and me, Davis Bird. It's a Free Baseball Podcast presented by the Athlete Sub. Honestly, we can just get right into it.
No.
Yeah, okay.
You must comment on my mustache.
Nice mustache, brother. Kind of rocking the same general facial hair. You need to get like the little kind of trash goatee.
I don't know if I want that. I think I'm just going mustache.
I don't either, man. I might have to get rid of it.
You don't want it? You have it on purpose.
It's too many colors, bro. My facial hair is like blonde,
you got
ginger
rainbow
brown.
Hair?
Yeah, it's kind of whack, to be honest.
It's pretty cool.
What's not whack is the hot weeks of these two players that play baseball. Jordan Walker, who I may or may not have picked up on my fantasy team right after he has done all of this and not gotten any of the benefit. But Jordan Walker of the St. Louis Cardinals hit 632, 650 on base, slugged pretty monstrous at 1.421, 7 runs, 4 dingers, 8 RBIs, worth almost 1 full F-WAR, 0.8 F-WAR that week. And this was one that I know you were super high on, and you were not the only one before the season started. And he's sort of been up and down, but this is a pretty high stretch right now.
Yeah, he's been back on fire. I mean, I think everybody remembers how he opened the season with one of the longest hit streaks ever to start a career. I think he tied for the record. He wasn't really hitting for power. And then the Cardinals, with their disastrous 2023 campaign, decided to send him down. And he was down for a while. Everybody was very confused. He got back and he really was underwhelming. But this past week plus, he's been showing why we were so hyped about him in the first place. He's just a pure hitter. He's athletic, not the best fielder, but that doesn't matter, especially when you hit over 600 for a week with 4 bombs. That'll play for any team. And that's it's really cool to see him doing so well. I still have high hopes for him in the future. I know you probably have mixed feelings considering he's a Cardinal and you're a Cubs fan, but yeah, Jordan Walker going off this week. Really cool to see. Maybe he'll win a Rookie of the Month to round it out, bookend the season.
Yeah, a little bit of Cardinals history to go along with this. Also, he's the youngest player in this stretch now. It has gotten him up to 15 home runs on the season. He's the youngest Cardinal ever to hit 15 home runs in a season, just beating Albert Pujols, which is pretty impressive. Yeah, he's been very good during this stretch. That 0.8 F-WAR actually brings him up to 0.3 F-WAR on the season. He sort of struggled at points.
He's not a good fielder.
No, he's not a good fielder, and that's mainly because he's a third baseman that they're sort of trying to shoehorn into the outfield.
And he's 21.
And he's young. He'll get better. The bat is obviously very good, and they'll be able to play him wherever. But yeah, Jordan Walker, he's a likable guy. I mean, he does play for the Cardinals, but I don't have anything against him. I hope he is successful. And if he continues stretches like this, I mean, it'll be pretty hard not to be successful. But a guy who has a longer track record, since he's not a rookie, not spring chicken anymore, but is Chris Bassett of the Toronto Blue Jays. He has 2 starts since the 13th. We're going on this one from the 30th of the month of August. So he has gone against the Washington Nationals. He went 8 innings. Both of these starts that we're going to talk about, but he went 3 hits. Didn't give up a run, 1 walk, 3 Ks. Not very many, but he got 6 whiffs, which was crazy. Good enough for a 32% called strikes plus whiff percentage. Chris Bassett, guy that kind of lives in the zone, had a lot of success with it too.
Yeah, I think he's quietly one of the better pitchers in baseball, and Fangraphs doesn't even want to load on my phone, so maybe it's just a me thing. That's what you get for paying for a premium membership. No, go and support Fangraphs. I think one of the best baseball websites out there. But nonetheless, yeah, he took advantage of some really bad teams this past week or so and took down the Nationals and the A's. And, that's what you're supposed to do. But pitching 8 innings in any start is very impressive nowadays. Doing it in back-to-back starts is really good. And he's been really good in the second half. That's why I was trying to pull up Fangraphs so I could see how he's been doing, because I know his ERA was over 4 at some point in early August, and now it's under 4. And
coming into today, it is 3.81. He has a 1.19 whip. So it's
Yeah.
under 4 now for I think the
But he's
first
been
time over the
really
season.
good in the second half,
Mhm.
which is great to see because he's a pretty advanced age. I think he's in his mid-30s. Once again, need Fangraphs to confirm everything. Really comes in handy when you're doing a podcast. You know, behind the scenes, people don't see it, but we do. But yeah, Chris Bassett is great. You know, I'm always going to be a fan of his. He's an A. You can't really say forever A, doesn't really work, as doesn't come off the tongue as well as forever giant. But yeah, Chris Bassett really good. I think a great signing by the Blue Jays, definitely an underrated one, especially with them losing Robbie Ray and with Alek Manoah being so terrible this year that he's just in the minors indefinitely. I think the fact that Bassett has been so solid this year, so trustworthy, and only continues to get better as the season goes on. I think that's really been great for them. They're still outside of the playoff race, so they're going to need a couple more incredible starts from Bassett like he had this past week.
Yeah, I think it's mainly a Fangraphs thing in general because not a lot of it is loading for me. But found a cool tweet, and it is actually from Jake's boss, Nick Pollock at Pitcher List.
The boy.
Go read everything on pitcherlist.com. It's like the best fantasy baseball website in the world. Yeah, coming into today, Chris Bassett had a 3.81 ERA and a 1.19 whip. Pollock goes on to add, if you remove his first start of the season, which was very rough for him, and you include his start from yesterday or from tonight as well, it looks more like a 3.28 ERA and a 1.1 whip flat. So it's like a 1.1 whip. And that's over 170 innings, which is very good for a guy that's more or less a middle of the rotation guy for his team. And I would probably say if that's your middle of the rotation guy, he's probably the best middle of the rotation starter in baseball. It's pretty good. Yeah, Chris Bassett, very, very good. And then his second start against Oakland, you already said he went 8 innings, 7 hits, 1 earned. Didn't walk anybody, 7 Ks, 18 whiffs, which is a lot more than 6. But it's against the A's. Still very good, though, for Chris Bassett. But beating up on the teams like that that aren't really in the thick of it, sort of what you need for a team that's trying to get back into the wild card race because they were sort of a favorite to be like a wild card team at the start of the year or even contend at the top of their division. And it's just like, it just hasn't happened. So hopefully he can lead them back to the postseason. And we can go to our players of the week, which we have an angel, and it's not Mike Trout and it's not Ohtani. It's a Luis Rengifo. To go along with NL paternity list member now, Trey Turner.
Yeah, Luis Rengifo has been quietly really good this season. I have no stats on him, but actually, yeah, I do. 262 for the season, 15 home runs, 6 stolen bases, but recently been really hot. I think the biggest thing about him is he is like a lefty killer. He's a switch hitter, so that's something to consider. I mean, maybe Ozzie Albies Jr. I know Rengifo does have some controversy as well, but with my lack of Google ability at the moment, I won't be able to speak on that. But he has been really underrated this year. I think quietly been one of the breakout guys that I don't think anybody has really talked about. Definitely a guy that's somewhat talked about in fantasy circles, but more so in deeper leagues. So he really doesn't get a lot of play. But recently he's been really good. And he's actually become one of the key pieces of that Angels offense because they've lost so many guys. They traded away or they waived guys at the waiver deadline, and then they lost Trout and Ohtani to injuries. So that lineup has really been weakened, but Luis Rengifo definitely taking full advantage, and he can play like anywhere. He can play third base, shortstop, second base, and all over the outfield. So that allows him to get in there every single day. And like I said, one of the best hitters against left-handed pitchers this year.
Yeah, he's been a different hitter in the second half. And it feels like kind of the story of his very young career so far. He's only 26, but he's kind of been a second half guy for his stint in the majors. Since July 1st, he's slashing right around like 304, like 303, like 380. I think it's 386 and then like 511 or close to like that. Let me see if I can pull up his actually updated splits. But in the second half, he's been just so much better. Yeah, in the second half, he's hitting 314 now. 10 home runs compared to 5 in the first half, which is very good. Yeah, Rengifo super utility guy. It's a shame that all of his production is coming when the Angels are completely out of it. But yeah, he's going to potentially be a decent piece for them to try to retain, I guess, because he is controllable for a team that's going to be really bad for the next few years. Yeah, Luis Rengifo. I remember back when Joe Madden was the manager, which feels so long ago for whatever reason now, that he was super high on Rengifo. And that was like the big thing, is trying to make sure he actually stayed up and got at bats. And he just didn't quite figure it out. But it's good to see that he's actually doing so now. Hopefully this second half can kind of continue, like sort of soothe this hot and coldness that he has going for him. Yeah, I like Rengifo. I like super utility guys like that. They're cool players. And then another guy that we're going to talk about here is Trey Turner, who is on the opposite end of super utility guy, unlike unsung, pretty solid guy, Luis Rengifo. Trey Turner, supposed to be one of the best players in baseball, really not had it this year. Sort of been a rough start to his Phillies tenure, and put it together. Player of the month.
Yeah, player of the week.
Player of the week, excuse me.
Don't worry, we'll get there. Yeah, he's finally figured it out. And I think the turning point that everybody has been pointing to on Twitter, at the very least, is the Phillies fans gave him a standing ovation. Whether or not that was sarcastic is still to be determined, but they showed some support for him, and that turned him around. I mean, he's going to be there for a long time. I know Nick Castellanos was making a point of that, but he's really turned things around recently. I think he had a point where he homered in like 4 games in a row or something. Maybe it was even 5. But he's been killing it, finally hitting for power. He's looking like WBC Trey Turner again, which is incredible. He was really good at the WBC this year. But yeah, he's been really good. Let's see. Home run in those. Why would they do the game logs in that order? They did game logs in chronological order. I do not want to see that. He had a home run in 5 straight games. He hit 6 home runs in 5 games and hit 7 home runs in 7 games. That's took his total from 15 to 22 on the season. And Trey Turner, known more so for his contact ability and his speed and also his sliding skills, but for him showing power, that's what makes him a one-of-a-kind player in baseball, and that's what he's been doing the past week.
Yeah, he's been back to the player that we sort of expected him to be. I mean, he got that mega deal with Philly, and then it just really has not worked. Even sort of leaking into like the fielding plays, and it's just like it was not a good start for him. And it's nice to see that he's looking like a top 10 hitter in baseball. Excellent. I mean, I'm super happy for him. He's a really likable guy. I know you probably don't care that much about him because he was a Dodger for a couple years, but I like Trey Turner.
I can shake it off.
Yeah, cool guy. Former Dodger is a good Dodger. Trey Turner, likable guy on the paternity list. So now he'll get the dad strength for Philly's playoff push. I really do think there's a correlation to dad strength being an actual thing in baseball, which is the best.
For sure.
Do you remember a couple years ago when Mike Trout went off after he had a kid? Where
it's a common theme.
Runs. I do really think so. But I misspoke, and we talked about players of the week. We're going to get to players of the month because we're going to do our August month in review, and we can start with our league leaders. And it's going to be 2 pretty common names here.
Oh, yeah.
League leaders in average. We talked about him a lot because he's been hottest hitter in baseball pretty much the entire second half. Julio Rodriguez led an average 429 in the NL. Mookie Betts really charging down. Ronald Acuna Jr. For NL MVP, 455 for the month.
He was unreal this month. I mean, really overshadowed what was a historic month from Julio as well. Like you'll see when we get to the WAR numbers that Julio is well behind Mookie, but was well ahead of the 3rd place guy in the majors. And Mookie just really had one of the best months of all time. I have right here that Mookie Betts finished August batting 455 with 51 hits, and as we'll talk about, 11 home runs. He's the 3rd player since 1900 to have a 450 average, at least, with 50 or more hits, 10 or more home runs in a single month, joining Babe Ruth in July of 1923 and 1924, and Lou Gehrig in June of 1930. So not only unmatched production in August, but one of the best months of all time, alongside two of the best hitters of all time, playing in an era that was completely different from this one. So there is an argument to be made. This is probably the best month that we've ever seen from a hitter. And it's crazy that it's somebody of Mookie Betts' caliber that isn't known just as like a hitter. He's a guy who is a great fielder, is really fast, and does so many things off and on the field that just make him an incredible athlete. Unfortunately, he is on the Dodgers, but really an absolutely bonkers month from Mookie.
Yeah, an insane year for him too. We just started September, and he is already almost at 8 F4. He's at 7.8 F4.
Mm-hmm. He's a 7.9 B WAR. He's up to 38 home runs on the year now with a 171 OPS plus.
It's a career high, isn't it?
I cannot.
Yeah, that is a career high. Last year he had 35. He's got 38 this year. He's almost at 100 RBI. He's got 99.
Mm-hmm.
He's closing in. If he has another month of the same caliber, he could probably beat 2019 in terms of runs scored as well. Like, he's also walking almost as much as he's striking out. Like, Mookie Betts has been, for my money, if I were to think the MVP race were to end today, I think it's insanely close. And right now, depending on how the month goes, I think Mookie is probably going to win MVP. Even though Ronald Acuna Jr. has had a great year, Mookie's just had an all-timer year as a hitter right now is what it's looking like if he continues this, even a small chunk of this space for September.
Yeah, I'm hoping to talk about awards discussions next week so that we can sort of prime ourselves for the off season when we get to that towards the end of the postseason, and probably talk about that when the regular season is over. But yeah, that's going to be a really tight race. I think it's going to come down to how things go in September. But I think they're going to be pretty much equal value, but I do think in the end, the stolen bases are probably going to make the difference there because, I mean, Ronald's been really incredible this year. I mean, we don't have to discuss it now, but that's going to be a very interesting discussion. If Mookie does another month anywhere close to this, then I think he's got it in the bag, but Ronald's been crazy this year.
Yeah. We've got our 2 cents in on Mookie Betts, and we're most likely going to repeat him several times the rest of this. Just like right now, we talk about runs leaders for the month. The AL runs leader, Jose Altuve, really solid since he has come back with 27 runs in August. Mookie Betts, 35 August.
Altuve's been crazy. I mean, we talked about him last episode because he got 2,000 hits and he hit for the cycle. And then yesterday he just hit 3 home runs in a game. And that was like 4 straight at bats that he hit a home run. He hit 5 home runs in a total of 2 games. And he hit those 3 home runs in the first 3 innings of the game as well. I think he became the 4th player ever to do that. The most recent one was Manny Machado. But yeah, he's been absolutely crazy this year, and it's unfortunate that he's had his season cut short by the hand fracture or break that he had during the WBC, because he would have had one of the best seasons of his career. And it's crazy because if you look at like WRC plus and OPS plus, I can't see his career numbers right now, but his OPS plus the past 2 years is better than his MVP year in 2017. Was that 2017? Was that the year? Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, which is crazy because that was an all-time year, and now he's batting .321. He's got 15 home runs. I mean, he's just such a pure hitter, and he's not slowing down at all at the age of freaking B-Ref won't show me his age.
He's 33. It's his age. It's his age 33 season, and Jose Altuve is already in 68 games posted 4 F4. His career high is 7.5. He's on he's been on pace to almost
How is that F4 so F4. Different? He's 2.6 on Baseball Reference.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm looking at Fangraphs. He has 4.0 flat F4 in 68 games, 15 home runs. Like, he's been outrageous. He's posting a career high walk rate, super low strikeout percentage, 17.5, which would be, very funnily enough, be the 2nd highest of his career. He's hit for the cycle. He's hit 3 home runs. He's up to almost 53 F4 now through age 33. He's most likely going to be a Hall of Famer. I really think so. Even despite all of the like the cheating stuff or whatever. I'm doing it like doing air quotes, like everyone can see it's like not even on the screen. But Jose Altuve, I think he's putting up a case to be the best hitting second baseman of all time, and it's very impressive to see this from him. And it's a shame that we haven't gotten. If this was going to be him this year, it's a real shame that we did not get to see a full year of this, because this would have been another like stretched out over a full season. I know it's like the pace and there's the ebbs and flows of baseball throughout the season. Things change, but he's posted 4 F-WAR in less than 70 games. Like he'd be almost on a lock to easily beat his MVP season. Like it's 7.5 F-WAR. That's very much attainable. It's 60 more games for him. That's pretty outrageous. I think he's got like a 969 OPS. Like 2 days ago, he had like an 8 something OPS. Like it's raised almost a full.
Oh yeah, he went off the last 2 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the fact that he's had that production the last 2 days, and that doesn't even factor into him leading the league in runs, leading the American League in runs last month is just a testament to how good he's been the whole season since he came back. But yeah, I think all your points about us missing out on a truly historic season is pretty disappointing.
Yeah. Something that is also disappointing is the Rangers' performance, but it's not due to one man, and it is Corey Seager, who led the AL in home runs with 10, which didn't beat Mookie Betts in the NL, who had 11.
Wild. Yeah, 2 very different players, but Corey Seager having one of the best seasons ever by a shortstop. I think no qualified shortstop has ever had an OPS over 1,050, and he's at 1,060 right now, so he could have an argument for having the best season ever by a shortstop. And he's also been injured at points during the year, so he hasn't really played a full season. Like I said, he is qualified now, but still only 382 ABs. But batting 343, leading the American League. He might catch Luis Arias, which would be something if Arias didn't lead the majors in batting average. But he's also added on 28 home runs, and last year was a career high with 33, and that seemed like not an outlier, but just like something that maybe might be, he was selling out for power that year, and that led to 33 home runs. But the fact that he might reach that not only in fewer games, he's at 95 right now. He's at 28 last year. He played 151 and hit 33. The fact that he might blow past that number in many fewer games, but also boost his batting average by almost 100 points. It really incredible. And I think the craziest part is that so many analysts saw this coming. Like he was the guy who was going to benefit the most from the shift being banned. And I don't think anybody thought it was going to be by this much, but yeah, I think we're seeing the best case scenario ever by Corey Seager. And it's been really incredible. 180 WRC plus on the year. He's already set a career high in F-WAR. He's at 5.6. And he won't slow down. So I think if he ends the year batting 340 with like 35 home runs in 115 games or whatever, that's wild.
Yeah, he's currently leading in WRC plus. I believe he's second in slugging percentage behind Ohtani. He's second in slugging percentage. He's hitting 340, which is just outrageous for him. He's like on like the StatCast metrics, he's like, I think he has an extremely high hard hit percentage. He comes in and like a Corey Seager game is he'll hit 4 times and he'll hit the ball hard probably 3, maybe 4 times a game. And then he'll just kind of be like, okay, it's Corey Seager. And it's crazy because Corey Seager, like everyone sort of acknowledges that he's very good. He feels like a star that's very much an unsung star, which fits with their other star on the team, Marcus Semien. It feels like both of those guys are like, oh yeah, they're good. And then nobody understands the scope of just how good. Like you said, this is potentially the best shortstop season of all time. Offensively, of course. He's not a great defender. Not nearly as good as a hitter. But, seeing this from Corey Seager is awesome. I like Seager. I'm glad he's not on the Dodgers also. I'm sure you are too. And having this season is crazy from a shortstop that's just like, oh, yeah, he just comes and plays baseball. No fanfare, whatever. What is his F-WAR this season?
5.6.
5.6. That's already a career high, of course.
Yep. You were on the money to mention the StatCast numbers, though, because his WOBA is .001 below his ex-Woba. So this is all completely deserved. He's got the same slug as his ex-slug, and his XBA is at 329, which is crazy. Like you said, 55% hard hit rate, 17% barrel rate, nearly 18%. He's just hitting the ball better than anyone, and he just like cannot be stopped. And it's crazy what he's doing this year.
Definitely. We've already talked enough about Mookie, so we're skipping Mookie again. We can go to the RBI leaders, which is going to feature a guy that plays for the Cubs, and that's Cody Bellinger, leading all of baseball with 31, followed very, very closely behind just the one, Julio Rodriguez, with 30.
Yeah, we talked about Julio, so we can just go straight to Belly, and he's having a really great walk year. I feel like we've talked about him at least once this year, but you know, the whole storyline about how he's really fallen off after his MVP campaign is pretty dramatic. The past 3 years, he was pretty bad. Just could not figure out how to hit the ball, could not avoid striking out too much. And this year, he's gotten right back on track to being pretty similar to the guy he was when he won MVP in 2019. The power isn't there, but the average is definitely there. Batting 319 on the year, 142 WRC plus, worth 4.1 F4. He's really been super good this year. And honestly, I feel like it's not talked about a lot, but maybe it's because he's been such a big subject of the baseball landscape over the past few years with his downfall, that it's like not as interesting of a story to like have him go from MVP to like sucking and then leaving to go to the Cubs and being really good. But I'm interested to see what you think he could make in the offseason. He's a huge platform year for him, and to have him come back and still be 27 going into his age 28 campaign after a really incredible year like this with an MVP caliber and rookie of the year caliber campaigns on his resume. Like what do you think he's looking at?
I honestly think it's going to look, I don't think he's going to get like a 300 million. I think it'll be like mid to high 200s, probably over like 9 years would be my guess, maybe 9 or 10. Sort of like somewhere in between what Chris Bryant got, and what Bryce Harper and Machado got. I feel like is probably
275.
Yeah, I think 260 to 275. He's driven in like 26 in his 26 runs in his last 19 games. A big thing for Cody Bellinger too is like a lot of what people sort of slated him for was the plate discipline. And when he was slumping the 2 seasons, the strikeout rate just kept climbing and climbing, and he was not walking nearly as much. He's striking out almost a career low rate this year, almost 15%. Actually, that is a career low. I lied.
Nice.
15.7% strikeout percentage, extremely good. He is very fortunate. He does have a very high BABIP. He's not hitting the ball as hard as he normally would, and he's actually worth 4 WAR, or he's worth 4.1 FWAR in 108 games. He's not also been an extremely good defender, and he's actually seen a lot of game time at first base. So it depends on what position teams value him the most at, because say he signs with the Cubs, he's in a weird spot positionally, and that's why I think his contract will look a little weird, if that makes sense, because like he's 27, going to be 28. He's probably not got a whole lot of years ahead of him as a really elite center fielder. He's probably either going to have to move to a corner. If he stays with the Cubs, which I feel like the Cubs, if they don't think they have a chance at Ohtani, they're going to sell out. They're probably the ones that are going to be shelling out a lot of money for him. I hope at least. But if they get him, that's with the intent of like, okay, are we going to pay him star center fielder money? And then he's going to probably have to play first base or a corner. That's sort of a weird spot to be in. But yeah, it's a good story to have not only him be sort of bouncing back this year, but also Christian Yelich, because that was sort of like the whole big decline. I'm sure you've seen the YouTube videos like, oh, what happened to Yelich and Cody Bellinger? They died at the same time.
They both bounced back this year.
Yeah, they both bounced back in a big way this year. Yelich obviously got paid, and now it's Bellinger's turn. And I think he'll get somewhere in like the mid to high 2s. It just depends on what position they're going to play. But it is nice to see him return to form. He's been very good, and he's sort of been the big catalyst for the Cubs in their playoff push, since they're actually like 1.5 games out of the Central now, which is kind of crazy considering where they're at, a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
That's enough waffling about the Cubs. We can talk about stolen base leaders. Julio Rodriguez has 11. Not going to talk about that guy. We are going to, however, talk about CJ Abrams, who led all of baseball with 13.
Yeah, he's really been good in the second half, which is saying something, I think, because I think there was a lot of time where it was just like, oh, this guy's gonna be a bust because he was like the big package in the Juan Soto deal, big return in the Juan Soto package. And he looked like he just wouldn't ever hit. And then in July, he had a 142 WRC plus, and he's just been stealing bases all season. I never thought that he would hit for this kind of power, and he's already up to 15 home runs on the year and now 38 stolen bases after this 13 steal month. And while he's still a below average hitter, 87 WRC plus, that's definitely pulled down by the first half, but he did have a 67 WRC plus in August. So I think he's going to be a streaky hitter. He's got terrible plate discipline. He strikes out less than 20% of the time, but he never walks. But the fact that he can lean into one, that he can produce a little bit of power, barrel rate almost 7%. And the fact that he is really fast, I think gives him a lot of potential. And he's still only 22. So he's got a lot of room to grow. I did not think we would see it this early. I thought this was a guy that was going to take like 4 years to like finally figure things out and start hitting. And now it's like, okay, he can hit a little bit. He's really fast. We know what his skills are on offense. Now it's just about improving defensively. I think he's one of the worst defensive shortstops in baseball, at least in terms of just straight up errors. Pulling it up. Who are the league leaders in errors? CJ Abrams with 20. The next worst, 17. Javi Baez and Trey Turner are these other shortstops with 17. So yeah, that's clearly an area of improvement that he can work on. But like I said, still 22. And I feel like with defenders, especially at shortstop, they can like improve like exponentially as they near 30, which is really weird because it's like you expect their athleticism to decline. But we've seen with Xander Bogaerts the past couple of years that you can really improve on your defense even as you enter your 30s, because it's more so about fundamentals than it is about athleticism. And I think Abrams will get there. So I think we've seen the glimpses of like his star potential that I was worried we wouldn't see for a long time, or that we'd never see. So I think this month, him showing his athleticism on the bases and now being one of the league leaders in terms of stolen bases. I think he's third in the National League right now. He's up to 40 now.
Yeah, he got 2
is really cool.
At 40. He's actually the third national ever with 40 steals in a season. Can you guess one? The other two? We've already talked about one. It's pretty easy.
We already talked about one. Trey Turner.
Hey, Trey Turner. You know the other one?
Lastings Millage.
No, Alfonso Soriano.
Good one.
Yeah. So also, he's the stolen base leader since July 1st. He's 4 better than Ronald Acuna Jr. He has 30 since July 1st, which is pretty crazy. Acuna has 26. He's also leading in BSR. And if you don't know what that is, that's sort of Fangraph's base running statistic, where I believe 0 is obviously average there. He's at 6. He's at 6.3, which would firmly put him just short of the elite category there.
Yeah, that's like base running runs for WAR.
Yeah, so he's been the best base runner and best base stealer in all of baseball since July 1st. And it's really good. He is still extremely young. Like you said, hitting for power. He's at 15 home runs. He's got 40 steals. He could go 20. He could go 20, 40 very easily. 5 home runs in a month. Not super out of the question. He could get pretty close there. I think he's a good get, even though, like you said, it looked like he wasn't going to be much of anything. It looks like he was never really going to be able to hit. It looked like he fielded the position very poorly and still sort of does. But that's something that young shortstops pick up a lot later on. So, it's good that the Nationals actually got something back for Juan Soto, along with their haul of prospects. And CJ Abrams looks like a big one here. We can talk about the OPS leaders, which are 2 familiar names, same as the F4 leaders. We'll talk about that also. The AL OPS leader for the month of August is Julio Rodriguez. Who would have guessed, with a 1.197 OPS, and then Mookie Betts. 1.355 OPS for the month. F4 at the same time. So we're talking about it. J-Rod, 2.4. Massive. Mookie Betts, 3 flat.
That's 18 F4 pace for the season, which is crazy. Yeah, I think this made it pretty clear who the players of the month were. I really don't think the voters had a difficult decision here.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. And like you said, talking about the F4 thing, Mookie with 3 in a month is outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what the highest number in a month is. Maybe look. I can type. It'd be really easy.
Dang, this is who you have teaching the children of the
I hate
next
you.
generation. He doesn't even know how to type.
I hate you.
He's got dogs, but he doesn't have that dog in him.
I don't. Completely blowing it next year. I can't find F4. I don't even care that much about it anymore. Moving on. We can talk about pitching stats because Mookie Betts and Julian Huller, you guys don't pitch. We can talk about wins on the AL side. A couple guys here: Pablo Lopez, Justin Verlander, Luis Castillo, all with 4. And then the NL, Freddie Peralta and Spencer Strider both got 5 in August.
Yeah, that's wins for you. The NL side, you had some really good pitchers, and on the AL side, you have some well-known pitchers, but nobody that was like on the
Really
leaderboards elsewhere. But Luis Castillo been great all season. Justin Verlander, Hall of Famer. I think Pablo Lopez really underrated. I think he's third in baseball in strikeouts this year. I think he's trailing only Spencer Strider and Kevin Gausman. Let's see if that's still the same. That is not the same. He got passed up by Blake Snell, but he's at 199 on the season now. But, you know, we're talking about wins here, and he's been lucky to have some good offensive support, and that's usually the case. But, you know, this is actually probably the best month for him in terms of wins. He's got 10 wins on the season. So this one was a big month for him. But yeah, I think Pablo Lopez having a really underrated season, and we'll have more than enough time to talk about Freddie Peralta and Spencer Strider going forward.
Yeah, Spencer Strider is still trying to make a case for NL Cy Young, although he sort of had a blow-up start tonight, and the ERA is not looking super good, even though I don't particularly put a whole lot of value into that stat. Although it's sort of weird for Cy Young because it is a results-based thing. Freddie Peralta also very good. And then you talked about like Pablo Lopez, Luis Castillo. Luis Castillo was one that I sort of had really, really high expectations for to start the season, and he's been fine. Nothing special, but it goes to show you like all these guys are on teams that are winning and sort of pacing their divisions right now. Wins are not the most telling stat in terms of determining how successful a pitcher is. We can talk about this other statistic, which is not a starter one, and it's saves. And on the AL, guess what? It's Luis Castillo's teammate, Andres Munoz, with 9 for the Seattle Mariners, leading the AL, and then 2 guys in the NL. Kyle Finnegan of the Washington Nationals with 10, and Adbert Alzolay also with 10.
Yeah. Andres Munoz took over the closer role, and Paul Sewald was traded at the deadline, and he's taken off. I mean, I feel like he hasn't really quite been the pitcher that we hoped he'd been, but the Mariners were so freaking good in August that it allowed Munoz to have a lot of opportunities. I think he's going to need to get the walks down if he really wants to get into that upper echelon of relievers, but he definitely has the stuff to do so. And Alzolay and Finnegan have been really interesting. I think Cubs sort of on that same trajectory as the Mariners and just being really hot in the second half, and that's allowed Alzolay a lot of save opportunities, especially without Mark Leiter Jr. getting in his way. And then I think Kyle Finnegan is the clear outlier here. The Nationals not been great this year. I wouldn't say they've been good in the second half either, but Kyle Finnegan, after starting the year off really bad, has been actually quietly incredible the whole season. I wouldn't say it's completely deserved if you look at his underlying metrics, but Kyle Finnegan, 10 saves in August. That's really good. And I don't think anybody talked about him outside of me and my boys on In the Pen.
Yeah, I'm obviously a big Alzolay guy. Jake is also, it's very funny. I have Munoz on my fantasy team. Jake has Alzolay on his. Mm-hmm. So yeah, pretty good. Helping us do good at fantasy baseball. And also, I really like watching Alzolay pitch. I like watching him get saves. He has the goofiest possible save celebration. He's got like the very generic band fist pump. Love that. Awesome. Really great. Kyle Finnegan, sort of a weird month also with 10 saves. He wasn't really even the clear-cut closer until like Hunter Harvey was like went down with an injury. It looks kind of like Hunter Harvey was closer
Yeah,
in waiting,
they
and then
tried
Kyle
to
Finnegan sort of ran with it.
yeah, they tried to give it to Harvey, and then Harvey got injured, and Kyle Finnegan just took it back. But yeah, it was weird the timing that they tried to make that switch over, because it was like early on in the season, it was like, okay, this guy's got an ERA like over 5, you might as well make the switch now to Hunter Harvey. And they waited until Finnegan was like really good for a long time, and then we're just like, now we're going to make the switch. And then Harvey got injured, and Finnegan really hasn't slowed down. I don't think this is a guy that, I mean, speaking of fantasy, talking about next year, this is not a guy that I would expect to have a 30 save season with a sub-3 ERA again. But yeah, it's cool to see him having this success this year against all odds.
Oh yeah. And then against all odds, we can talk about another one of these guys here. It's good things happening for the Kansas City Royals. Never happens ever, but this time it has. Cole Reagans, the big return in the Aroldis Chapman trade, going to the Royals. He is the ERA leader in all of baseball and obviously the American League with a 1.72, followed closely behind by Freddie Peralta of the Milwaukee Brewers. Reagans has been lights out since he's joined the Royals. So extremely good. I know we talked about Nick. I talked about the Nick Pollock tweet earlier. Nick Pollock is like super in on Cole Reagans. And I appreciate that he is, because I also picked him up on my fantasy team, and he has been like the one starter that I can actually rely on here recently.
Yeah, no, he's really good. And yeah, we talked about him extensively last week, so I won't go over the changes that he's made in Kansas City and just how much of a steal the Royals have gotten there. But yeah, he's been really incredible. And I think now, like, one of the tweets I saw this past week that I really related to was somebody was like, Cole Reagans went from somebody that I was going to get in like all of my fantasy drafts next year, and then 2 weeks later, he was a guy that I'm not going to get in any of my fantasy drafts. Like, he's going to go so high. He's going to have like a Shane McClanahan-esque rise to stardom in terms of starters, where it's just like, he's got that small sample size where you're just like, oh wow, like this guy's really good. And then I think he's gonna really extend that. If he keeps this going for another month, then it's gonna be like, oh, he's gonna go off in the top 15 starters or whatever, and it's gonna be pretty ridiculous, especially without literally any track record. He pitched a little bit last year, but not much, and he's just been so good this year, and I think it's really awesome. But yeah, it will be difficult to get him in fantasy, because I think everybody's going to want him. He's the shiny new toy.
Definitely sort of a thing in fantasy football, in fantasy sports in general. Shiny new toy syndrome always sort of kicks in.
Did you pick up Matt Manning?
I did pick up Matt Manning. He went.
he fractured his foot. He's out for the season.
Yeah, he went one inning and he ate a 119 mile per hour comebacker off his foot from Giancarlo Stanton.
Nice job. It's all your fault.
Yeah, it is. It sure is. I literally got him because he had a stretch like Cole Reagans and like Michael Lorenzo, he would. No, I'm talking about like in terms of the competition they're going to play. Reagans had like a stretch where he played against like the Tigers and the Athletics and like the Nationals and like somebody else that was really bad. Like he had like 4 starts that were all against teams that were terrible with awful offenses. Matt Manning was going to have the same thing, and he's had decent numbers. It's like, okay, great, I got one that's going to work out. And then he just died, so that's really cool.
R.I.P.
Yeah. Do we need to talk about Freddie Peralta?
We'll get there.
We can talk about him here in a minute. We can talk about the whip leaders right now. Also, both of these guys tied, very funnily enough. The whip leaders for all of baseball in the AL and NL are George Kirby and Brandon Woodruff, both with 0.8 whip.
Yeah, and we've talked about George Kirby this year. I would say pretty extensively. You've got him on your team, and he's just one of the best pitchers ever at not walking anybody, which is really cool. But really great season from him. I'm excited to see that Mariners rotation in the playoffs. I think Castillo and Kirby and Gilbert is going to be a really tough trio to go up against. But Woodruff recently made his return to the majors after getting injured really early in the season and then being out for most of the year. And now he's back, and he's been really good since coming back. He's made 8 starts. He's got a 2.30 ERA and a 0.79 whip. Those are some really, really good numbers. And I think Woodruff is an ace that nobody ever talks about. Like if we're talking about like super underrated guys, I think there was a time where Woodruff was talked about a lot, and he's quickly gone back to the underrated well, because every time you like think he's not going to be good, like last year he started off the year and he had Raynaud syndrome. He couldn't like feel his hands and stuff, and he came back and then was really great in the second half. And then this year got injured really early on, and now he comes back and he's once again really good. Like he's never been bad outside of like stretches where he's injured. I think that's really cool to see. Career ERA of 3.12, and he's just been really good in his short amount of time on the field. But yeah, I think lots of confidence in Woodruff, Burns, and Peralta also being one of the best rotation trios in baseball if they can wind up in the postseason.
Yeah, Brandon Woodruff has struck out 30% of batters that he's faced this year. And what is very crazy about that, you talked about him being like one of the more unsung like aces. And I really feel like that's because of his teammates. You talk about Burns and Peralta. It felt like until Burns really became the guy for them and Peralta had his breakout year, it was like, okay, everyone knew Woodruff was the ace of the Brewers. It's like, okay, now everyone kind of assumes he's the third starter. He's like, he's good. It's not, no, he's an ace. He's a very, very good pitcher.
Yeah.
Since the All-Star break, like you said, he's striking like what a low 2 ERA. He's striking out 30% of batters he's faced. He's gone like 170 innings with 179 innings with 211 strikeouts. He's got a sub-1 WHIP on the season too. He's like
170 innings. What are you looking at?
Excuse me. I'm looking at the wrong thing. I'm looking at the wrong thing. But he's struck out so many in a short amount of time. He's been injured this year. He's got a 2.3 ERA. I was looking at like the wrong year because I'm an idiot. He still has a sub-1 WHIP. It's lower. It's like a 0.79 WHIP, which is crazy.
I feel like the reason he's so underrated is because he's never had like a truly full season. He had 1 year over 160 innings pitched and only one other year over 130 innings pitched. So it's probably the workload where it's like people forget about him pretty easily because he's not throwing 200 innings consistently.
Yeah. But if you look at his Savant page, I mean, like everything really checks out too. Like his xERA still super high, or still super low. It's in line with everything. I'm looking at the red bars. Like everything's sort of in line because my finger is acting like an idiot right now too. Like his xERA is 2.91. He has like a 2.3 ERA. He's a 3.81 FIP, but his xFIP is 3.61. Like he's been very good. Strikes out a lot of guys. I think this is probably the best like trio that you could potentially face in a playoff series, and especially if for whatever reason they have to play a wild card game, or like a wild card series. Their rotation is like a Death Star. It's difficult to get around these guys, and Brandon Woodruff really deserves to be placed among that high tier of pitchers. It's just a shame that we can't really ever get a full season out of him. Yeah. And onto the strikeouts, we just talked about Freddie Peralta. We talked about another guy. Cole Reagans led all of baseball strikeouts, 53 for the month. And then the NL, Freddie Peralta and Spencer Strider both had 46.
Yeah. Spencer Strider, I mean, he just one of the best strikeout pitchers of all time, and he's in like his second season. Crazy. I don't know if we ever talked about him breaking his own record for like quickest to 200 strikeouts in a season, which he set last year as a rookie, breaking Randy Johnson's record, and now he's broken it already. He's so good. I don't know how he's got a 3.83 ERA, just gives up too many home runs, but he's crazy. He's still only 24. I mean, he is on a Hall of Fame path as long as he can maintain his health, which will be the big thing. That's usually what you see with guys throwing as hard as he does. But yeah, I mean, just another incredible season. He's already at 250 strikeouts. He's on his way to 300 strikeouts. And if he got 46 this last month, I don't think he's going to get to 300. Actually, he won't throw enough innings, but it'll be close. He's going to be like 280.
Yeah. He's had the crazy part about him is it feels like he's still not had he's obviously been great and he's striking out a lot of guys. It feels like he's still sort of not at the peak of his powers. He's had a couple starts. He's had a couple starts this year where he's really gotten blown up. He had one tonight too. He gave up 6 to the pretty terrible Cardinals, but he strikes out so many guys that you can sort of live with it. He feels like another guy that would just be nails in the playoffs because the Braves are obviously going to be one of the top dogs there. You can live with a couple blow up starts here and there. Garrett Cole has them all the time. Like it feels like he's due like 2 or 3 a year. Spencer Strider still second year. And he said, what's the total he's at? Because I think he added 6 more tonight.
250 strikeouts. Is that what you're asking about? Or innings?
Yeah. I'm talking about strikeouts for the season.
250.
250. Is that including tonight? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
MLB.com updates.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still looking at Fangraphs. But yeah, that's pretty crazy month for Strider. And then Freddie Peralta, same thing. Talked about Woodruff not really getting the shine. Burns typically touted as the ace of that staff. Freddie Peralta, after last season, not really being a good follow-up on his breakout campaign. Yeah, back to form. He's still very, very good.
Yeah, I think Peralta is in that same boat of like not really appreciated as much as good of a pitcher as he is because of his light workloads. He's always seeming to get injured, but he's been really good this season. Actually nearing 200 strikeouts, which is crazy because he's only tossed 150 innings, but quietly really good. I've had mixed opinions on him throughout the last few years, mostly stemming from his lack of workload, but he is really good this season, which is awesome to see, and was absolutely incredible in August.
Definitely. And on that same vein, we can talk about the F4 leaders for the month. Guess what?
Bro, you're making fantasy moves in the middle of the podcast.
Yeah, well, I have to go get rid of Matt Manning because he died. So, F4 leaders: Cole Reagans 1.8, Freddie Peralta 1.4.
Nice.
Good at baseball. Don't need to talk about them anymore. We can talk about the monthly awards, player of the month. Hey, who is it, Jake? Who do you think it could possibly be?
Ramon Laureano.
Does he even still play baseball?
Barry Bonds. Yeah, he's on the Guardians.
Beryl Bond. Yeah, it's J-Rod and it's Mookie. Pretty extremely obvious. Pitchers of the month, also extremely obvious. Cole Reagans and Freddie Peralta. They led in like every single stat. Rookie of the month, though, some pretty interesting ones here, and I will let you talk about the AL Rookie of the Month because that plays for your team.
Zach Geloff was really good in August, which was great to see. We almost talked about him. He was going to be our Hot Weeks guy last week, but then we got delayed by my computer being broken. So we didn't get to talk about him, but he's been really good. And of course, Fangraphs broken again for me. So I won't be able to use any stats, but yeah, he had, I think he set a record early on in his career for like number of extra base hits through his first X number of games, which was cool to see. But yeah, the A's really have not had much to cheer about this year. I literally can't even think about anything else. Like anything they've had that was good has really gone to shit. Like Mason Miller was the hot guy early in the season, and then he got injured. He actually just came back today, which was great to see. But Zach Geloff, who quietly was having like a really good year in the minors and was one of the A's top 3 prospects, I think, came up and immediately set the world on fire. He strikes out a little bit too much, but a 142 OPS plus. He's got 10 home runs and 10 stolen bases on the year, and he's batting 275. That's really good. And I think this is somebody that can quietly be somebody that the A's can build off of over the next couple of years, and that's really fun. And then James Outman in the NL, did he win in April?
I think he did. Let me look that up. I'm pretty sure.
Me too. I'll look it up too.
A cool stat about Zach Geloff, because we are talking about that right now. So he got 10 steals also. He's had a good season. He has 10 home runs and 10 steals. He's actually the first A's rookie to do that since Yoenis Cespedes, and he's the 6th A's rookie to ever do that.
Wow. James Outman did win NL Rookie of the Month in April, so that's twice this year.
Yeah, he sort of had that really hot start and then really fell off, striking out way too much. And it's sort of good to see him bounce back with the Dodgers sort of youth movement with him. It seemed like a guy, like To me, he seemed like a guy that would sort of fit like that niche, like a guy that strikes out a lot. He'll hit for some power. He's a pretty solid fielder. But yeah, he's had a little decent run of it. Fangraphs would actually load for me. I think it's just being slow in general. That would be greatly appreciated. But good times for rookies in California.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to bother trying to get to it anymore. Moving on. We talk about relievers of the month. AL saves leader here, Andres Munoz for the AL. And then, funnily enough, not the saves leader, Raisel Iglesias, the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, they couldn't decide, so they just went with Raisel.
Yeah.
No, he's been really good this year, especially in August. He didn't allow a run, and the Braves were winning a bunch of games, so he was getting a bunch of saves. And he started off the year pretty cold because he was coming off a month-long IL stint to start the year. And then since then, he's just been on absolute fire. And surprisingly, with how good the Braves offense is, they do have close games quite often. And Raisel has been able to capitalize on that, getting a bunch of saves. He's already got 28 saves on the year. And like I said, he missed the first month of the season. So, I mean, add on like 5 and he's like right in the NL saves leaders. And yeah, really great season. I think he's been one of the most consistent elite relief pitchers in baseball over the past few years. That's been really cool to see. I love Raisel Iglesias, and deservedly reliever of the month in the NL.
Definitely, and we can get to our standings check-in here because there's been some changes.
Oh yeah.
Are we going to go over division standings, or are we also going to look at the wild card?
Why not both?
Okay, we can do that.
Por qué no los dos?
Oh my God, everything is being slow. The internet.
I got it. Your internet's broken?
No, it's just being a bastard. Man.
It's the Mercury's in retrograde, my guy.
Yeah, Mercury's in Gatorade.
We can start with the
I don't mess with all that space racism stuff, Jake. It's not cool.
Space racism? Oh
yeah,
gosh.
I don't mess with all that.
All right. Well,
run down the divisions
with the AL East. And the Orioles are still in first place with 87 wins. The Rays are 3 games back. Toronto, 11 games back. Boston, 16 games back. And the Yankees are back above 500. We just needed to light a fire under them. You know, Aaron Judge listens to our podcast and heard us shitting on them in the last podcast with Isaiah on here. But one of my favorite tweets recently was that they were 69-69 for the first time since 1969.
That's
very
so
nice.
Sick.
Yeah,
it
is
really
really
nice.
But they have not finished under 500 in forever, and they're very close. But they'll do the best that they can to not finish there. But it looks like this is going to be a 2-team race between the Orioles and the Rays at this point. And my money's on the Orioles, but the Rays are right there, despite losing like all of their rotation to the injured list.
Yeah, I still think the Orioles have enough to get it over the line, and the Rays are just coping so much with having no starters anymore. Mm-hmm. But they're still pumping out guys that are just like, oh yeah, here's Aaron Savali. Didn't Aaron Savali strike out like 11 in his last start or something like that?
No idea. I'm sure that sounds like something he would do on the Rays. I'm
pretty sure he did.
Yeah, but the Orioles have the best record in the American League at 87-51. It's the second best record in baseball, which is very surprising. Did not think this would be the year that they would fully break out, but they're well on their way to a 100-win season.
I'm sorry. Aaron Savali in his last start struck out 12, and actually since they got him, here's his season line. He's gone 107 2/3. He has a 2.76 ERA. He's only walking about 6% of any batters he faces, and his strikeout percentage has gotten up to almost 22%. And he's got like almost a 1 flat whip.
The Rays are crazy. They'll just get a guy like Zach Eflin or Aaron Savali, and everybody's just like, why would you want those guys? And then they're just the best pitcher in baseball. Yeah, it's crazy. That'll be one of the more fun races in baseball. I think there's probably like 2 division races that are going to come down to the wire. I guess you can throw the NL Central in there now that the Cubs have made it a race, but like AL East, AL West, and NL Central, I think are going to be really close. But AL East, I think 2 most high-powered teams going against each other there. In the AL Central, the worst division in baseball, you got the Twins with 73 wins leading the division, 6 games over the Guardians. The Tigers are 9.5 back. The White Sox are 19 games back, and the Royals are 29.5 back. And for just a moment, they had the worst record in baseball. Right now, second worst record in baseball, which is crazy because the A's are like having like a historically terrible season, and the fact that the Royals, who actually tried this year, are so bad is crazy. But the Twins are so lucky and to be in this division, and they are going to get destroyed in the playoffs as they always do.
Yeah, I love that you talked about the AL East. Like, oh yeah, this is going to be like the most high-powered, like highly anticipated division race. This is the worst division race. It sucks. All these teams are terrible. There's nothing redeeming about
Who's
the AL
the
Central
best
at all.
bad team?
Yeah, which one of these dumpster fires deserves to be in playoffs? They should just not have one. Just put the
Yeah,
Jays in there. Someone else. Because like
yeah,
I think the Rangers slipped out of a wild card spot, like something
yeah,
like that.
which
Like
is
that
crazy.
sucks. Speaking
Yeah,
of that, we can talk about the AL West.
yeah.
Um,
Houston finally has a grasp of first place, which is not something that I think we would have thought we would have been saying in that way, where it's like, oh wow, Astros finally in first place because they were the favorite to win that division. The Rangers had a stranglehold the whole year, and then the Mariners came out of nowhere and they took first place. So it's a really tight battle right now. Mariners just half a game back. Rangers 2 games back. The Angels are 14.5 back, and the A's, with the worst record in baseball, are 36 games back.
yeah, Rangers sort of waning. They're really struggling.
Crazy how bad
Mac,
they've been.
yeah, last night Nathan Eovaldi got shelled. Tonight, Max Scherzer has just gotten shelled. I don't know if you've seen his updated line because it is not pretty. He's gone 3 innings, gave up
The
7.
Verlander versus Scherzer game
Yeah,
sucked.
Scherzer gave up 7 earned runs.
That's not fun. Oh,
Rangers are
it's 12
getting
to 3. Wow.
Rangers are getting
If the
smoked.
Rangers miss the playoffs, that would be such a terrible fall off. Like we've seen
Yeah,
this the past couple of years. I think the Padres did it a couple of years ago. The Mets sort of did it last year. They didn't miss the playoffs, but they lost the division despite an incredible season. And the Rangers do have a possibility of missing out on a wild card spot. And speaking of the wild card, right now the 3 teams that would be in are the Rays, the Mariners, and the Rangers, who are technically tied with the Blue Jays. Their winning percentage is .001 above the Blue Jays right now. They haven't played the same number of games, but that seems to be the teams that are in the race. I think the Red Sox are close enough to make it. I mean, even the Yankees could realistically make a push. They're 6.5 out of the last wild card spot. Red Sox are 5 back, but I think those 4 teams are going to be the ones to fight for it. The Rays, I think, are locked in. So then it's just like Mariners, Rangers, Blue Jays. Who do you think misses out?
it really feels like the Rangers right now with the way it's going. Their bullpen has been completely shambolic. They're terrible. If their rotation can't figure it out, it doesn't matter how good their lineup can be. If your guys are going out there and giving up 8 and 7 runs, like they've gotten completely destroyed by the Astros the last 2 nights. I think they lost like 14-1 last night or something like that. Like they got destroyed. So right now it feels like the Rangers are going to be the team to miss out. And that really would be sort of a real bummer because they've been such a fun team the whole year. It's been really exciting to see what they do. They've made this huge push and it's just not working out. But it really feels like I don't think the die has quite been cast. And obviously there's still time left, but I feel like the Rangers are going to be the one that misses out.
Yeah, just with the current vibe, just the way things are going,
Yeah.
it really seems that way. In the National League, starting with the NL East, the Braves, best record in baseball. They've already got 90 wins. The Phillies are 13.5 back. Marlins 18.5 back. Mets 26.5 back. And the Nationals with 28 games behind the Braves. And I mean, really not much to talk about this division in it by itself because the Braves are just running away with it.
Yeah, definitely feels that way. Atlanta's pretty much the best team in baseball, the most complete one, at least for my money.
Yeah,
I think they're just head and shoulders better. I think the Orioles had a shout at it, but with Felix Bautista going down, that kind of limits a lot of their bullpen.
sure.
Um, and then I think the rotation with Atlanta is still probably better than Baltimore's. So I think Atlanta's probably got the best team in baseball. They obviously have the best lineup in baseball. It's the best lineup we've seen probably in the last 10 years at least.
Maybe ever.
Maybe ever for a full season, which is just outlandish to say, but they've been really good. But I think that's not to discredit the Phillies, who we'll talk about in a little bit when we get to the wild card standings. But they've been improving steadily.
Yeah, and then NL Central, it's getting tight, as we alluded to a couple times. The Brewers are in first place with 77 wins, but the Cubs are just 1.5 games back. The Reds 5.5 back. The Pirates 12.5, and the Cardinals are 16 games back. That's gonna be an interesting race, because I think the Cubs have the momentum right now, but the Brewers have the experience of like being in a pennant race. The Cubs obviously have not been there since like 2017. Was that the last time they made the playoffs?
No, they made it in 2020.
Oh, okay.
They made it in 2020. Yeah, they lost to the Marlins.
Okay.
Well, they scored one run in 2 games against the Marlins.
Well, there it is. So I think it's like a young versus whatever you consider the Brewers to be.
Old.
And I think that'll be a good battle, because the Brewers have a really interesting team that I think is always underrated. They're sort of like the Rays of the National League, except worse. But where they're always just like towing the line of like, yeah, we're never going to go all in, but we're never going to go all out. And I sort of like that. I like teams that won't just completely go into rebuild mode, and they're just always like, sometimes it's our year and sometimes it's not. I think that's great. It's worked well in this division so far. But with the way the Cubs have been playing, with Bellinger, with Seiya Suzuki finally figuring it out, with call-ups coming up, especially in the rotation, with a guy we'll talk about later, and who's that left-hander with the changeup, Jordan Wicks.
That's Jordan Wicks.
Yeah, the Cubs are exciting. How are you feeling about their chances in the division?
I don't think they'll win the division. I think they'll make it a race, but I feel like they're still going to be stuck with a wild card spot. Their rotation isn't as good as the Brewers, although there's obviously like a couple pluses about it. They're sort of relying on guys like Jordan Wicks. They just called up Luke Little. He's most likely going to fill a bullpen role right now. But I think it'll be close, and I think the Brewers are just going to edge it out. I just don't think the Cubs, they have a good team, but they're relying on a lot of young guys, and I think the Brewers just sort of have a little bit more like experience. They're a little bit more of a complete team. They have a better bullpen, better rotation, maybe a worse lineup, but I think they can deal with that. Put the meme before we go to the next division. Put the meme up on the screen.
Oh, give me a sec.
Still not that one. That one's still sort of.
There we go.
Yeah,
it's really lasted the whole year. I mean, they are only 3.5 back of the Pirates, but I mean, it might survive, and then you can use it all off season. Make it your like banner on Twitter.
I'm about to shout out to the Pirates and CB Buckner for boning the Brewers today. It was one of the worst.
CB is at it again.
Yeah, it's David Bednar got a called strike that was legitimately maybe 4 inches off the plate.
CB's been crazy recently, like so bad.
It was almost in the other batter's box. It was so bad, and he called it a strike to have them lose the game.
He's the new Angel Hernandez,
and I don't know if he's that bad yet, but he's still really
he's bad. Been so bad recently. He forgot to reset the pitch clock on one guy, and then with like 3 seconds left, with the batter like not in the batter's box, he called a pitching clock violation on the pitcher.
What an idiot.
It was like, none of this adds up.
Angel Hernandez still has the absolute worst correct called strike percentage in baseball. It's so bad.
He probably rarely gets to home plate umpire.
He's been doing it more recently, and he's been the worst by a mile. He sucks so bad.
But to wrap things up, we'll go with the NL West, and unfortunately, Dodgers still in first place. And both of us predicted twice this year in the preseason and midseason that the Dodgers would miss out on the playoffs. They have an 84-54 record, which is the fourth best in baseball, the second best in the National League. They're 13 games ahead of the Diamondbacks. They're basically locked into a postseason spot. Giants are 15 games back, Padres 19 and a half games back, and the Rockies with the worst record in the National League. Our team, where's my I got Charlie Blackman right here, my
Love
boy.
them Rockies.
We do love them Rocks. They are 33 and a half games back of the Dodgers. Dodgers basically locked into a playoff spot.
I like the prediction that we made still, and I'll stand by it.
You won't.
I'll stand by it. And hear me out. Hear me out. The Dodgers are doing a decent job, but the Dodgers are not winning this division. All the other teams that should have been good in this division are losing this division because the Giants were so close to the start of the season. They've completely fallen off.
They're so bad.
The Cubs swept them, by the way. So the Cubs swept them. They're down to 70-70. They're back at 500 again. The Diamondbacks have looked like they were going to make it a race. They've fallen off. The Padres have been ass.
They're terrible.
They're terrible. Everyone expected the Padres to do something.
Which is crazy,
and they're
with
awful.
The talent on their team.
Yeah, there's no excuse for the Padres to be that bad. They're almost 10 games below 500. They're 9 games below 500 right now, which is embarrassing. And the Dodgers they have 84 wins. Pretty good, but look at their bum division they're playing in right now. They get to beat up on the Rockies and the Padres, who have no clue what they're doing at all. It's like everyone else in the division recently has been that one picture of Patrick from SpongeBob where he's got a board nailed to his head and he's just sitting there holding a hammer. Like, it's exactly what that division has been recently. The NL West has turned into like almost the AL Central because every other team.
At least they have one good team.
That's true. Every other team has been complete cheeks. And the Dodgers are just running away with it.
Which is crazy because now none of them are in the wild card race. I mean, they're in the race, but they're not scheduled to be in. So right now, the three teams that are in are the Phillies, the Cubs, and the Marlins. The Diamondbacks and Reds are half a game out of third place, and the Giants are 2.5 games out of third place, which is really bad. I feel like the Phillies are locked in, and I think the Cubs are locked into a playoff spot either way. So I think the battle really comes down to the Marlins, Diamondbacks, Reds, and maybe the Giants if they can pull it together for the final month, the stretch run. But who do you think is the third team in if the Phillies and the Cubs are locked in?
Cincy. I think it's Cincinnati. I think
they are fun.
They're fun.
They are injured.
They're a little injured. The big problems with the Reds, I think, is the rotation's not that good. The
bullpen is terrible.
Their bullpen is not good at all. Huge problem. They've also had a couple clutch moments, though. Their lineup can get it done, and I really like their lineup even with the injuries. They still have guys there like Spencer Steer that just do a job. Ellie De La Cruz, same thing. He sort of picked it up. He had like the really hot start, and then he slumped really, really bad. But I watched every game of the Cubs and Reds series, and that lineup just would not die. No matter what the score was, they could just fight back.
I think they have the most walk-offs this year.
They do. And at the same time, if they are playing in Great American Small Park, it doesn't matter how injured their lineup is. That lineup will be dangerous there. They've gotten some reinforcements in the rotation. They've gotten TJ Antone back. I think he had
the boy.
Did he have Tommy John? I think he had Tommy John.
I think he had something worse than Tommy John, but
he had something weird. But they're getting some reinforcements to the rotation back. Andrew Abbott has still been going extremely strong. He's been very good. Is Hunter Green supposed to pitch again this year?
He's back. He has COVID.
I was going to say he was out for a while.
Then he was back for 3 starts, and then he got COVID. Actually, their whole rotation got COVID.
Nice. They just need their rotation to not get COVID and to be decent, and they need their bullpen to just not be ass. And I think they're going to run away. They're going to run away with it. I don't think the Diamondbacks are very good. I don't think the Marlins are very good either. I don't think the Giants are much of a threat because of the wild card teams that are in it with a shout at it. The Giants have the worst lineup by far. They just can't hit at all, which is really sad because I would like to see Logan Webb pitch in the playoffs again because he's awesome. I really like watching him. Alex Cobb, same thing. I like what the Giants do. It's just their lineup is so miserable that they're just at a complete deficit no matter what.
Well, I honestly think you've convinced me because with the Marlins losing Sandy Alcantara for the year, which is really devastating. I really hope it's not Tommy
Yeah.
John worthy. Um, that's a huge blow to the rotation. I mean, they've got a great rotation, but you really losing your ace is really tough. And they're a pitching first team, so that's going to be a big blow. So I think that's going to be really difficult for them to recover from. Diamondbacks, I think they just have too many holes right now. I think they have
Yeah.
an interesting team, but they just don't have it all together. I think mostly in the rotation. And then the Giants, I really hope they make it. I think they always like have that weird it factor that allows them to like do crazy stuff. And obviously they got the cheating factory now, but the Reds, they just are the most exciting team. And I think that's going to help them like have the vibes to get them into the playoffs.
Yeah. They've got the um, X vibes and X grit to get
X
them across
vibes
the line.
off the charts.
Yeah, I really like the Reds. I think they're a good team. Other than the Marlins, who are still sort of there in the last 10, they have the best win loss of the other three teams. They're 5-5, but still, I think they're also going to get to beat up on the Central for a large chunk of the month. And they're like, I think they play like the Cardinals, and I think they play the Pirates a couple times. So like that should probably help their chances. So yeah, I'm going to go with Reds to get the last spot. Although I think the most dangerous team out of these wild card teams is going to be the Phillies, and that's just because their lineup is so good, and they have that one too with Nola and Wheeler. But yeah, I'm hoping the Cubs can get it done because that would be very cool to watch them. Even though I know they probably won't really do anything in the actual playoffs.
Agreed.
We can talk about a few of our favorite things, though, and it's some successful debuts of rookies. It's a shame we don't have Isaiah here because the first one that we're going to talk about is the Martian, Jason Dominguez. He posted these really cool pictures he had of him, like in person, that were really cool. And I don't think it was High A, the Renegades or whatever. That is super sick.
Yeah.
And Jason Dominguez, first home or had a home run in his first ever at bat.
Yeah, it was crazy. I remember getting a notification. He was definitely lucky that he was playing in Houston with the Crawford boxes. Definitely helped a little bit, but counts all the same, and it's really cool, especially with how much hype he had coming into just professional baseball in general. And I mean, I wouldn't say he's lived up to it. He's played like 4 games, but that's so cool to have so much hype and then come up and then just completely cash in on it right away. And then he homered again in his 3rd game, and that one was a bomb. But he became the 2nd player ever to homer in his first career at bat against a reigning Cy Young Award winner. He was facing Justin Verlander, who won the AL Cy Young Award last year. The other player to do that was Marcus Thames in 2002 against Randy Johnson.
What a name. What a name, Marcus Thames. Jason Dominguez there. And then on the other side of New York, Ronnie Mauricio, also first career hit, rocket shot double, 117 miles per hour off the bat. Hardest hit by a Mets player this year, and the hardest first career hit in the StatCast era, which beats Luis Robert Jr. almost by a full 2 miles per hour. His was 115.8.
Yeah, that was really cool. And I feel like Mauricio is now somewhat in that territory of Ellie and O'Neal Cruz, where he's just like a big shortstop that has that elite exit velocity that you rarely ever see. Mauricio not as tall as the others. He's 6'3". I think Ellie's 6'5", and O'Neal's like 6'7". But I think he does sort of mix them well together because he does have elite power and elite speed and clearly elite exit velocity as well. So that's really cool to see him get off to a good start. He's been really good in his first few games as well. And just whenever you like, I think this is the great thing about baseball is you've always got talent coming in. It's so different from the other sports, just the way that like you filter talent into the majors. And it's always so fun to see like a guy that's had really good success in the minor leagues and then come up and just live up to it right away. I think that's really awesome for both of these guys. And I think Ronnie Mauricio is going to be really exciting because anybody with an exit velocity like that is somebody that you really got to pay attention to.
Yeah, he's chasing history right now. He has a 5-game hit streak to start his career. I think the Mets record to start a career is 7. I think it's like Daniel Murphy has that since he got hit tonight. Hopefully, he can get that. Pretty cool. It'd be something nice for the Mets, who I think it's funny. We talk about the wild card standings. The Mets have the chance to be the funniest team in history. I think they're like 7.5 games back of somehow getting into a wild card spot, which would be the funniest Mets season of all time. But yeah.
Oh, Dominguez hit another home run today?
Yeah, he did. Wow. It was his first in Yankee Stadium.
That's crazy. Yeah, I think he's going to be really good.
Yeah, he's probably going to be really, really good. Some new promotions that happened today, though. Luke Little was called up by the Chicago Cubs. He's the number 25 prospect. He was a 4th-round pick and a 2020, I think, left-handed pitcher. He's most likely going to factor in the bullpen, but he's been a starter. Strikes out a lot of guys. He had like 101 strikeouts in like 63 innings, which is pretty good. He throws hard from the left-handed side. He's got a sweeper slider, which is the new hotness around baseball, in case you didn't know. Other than that, there's not all that much to say about Luke Little, really. He's the number 25 prospect in a Cubs system that's pretty loaded in terms of pitching prospects. This other one, though, is a big one. And I'll talk about that one.
Yeah, the Diamondbacks promoted Jordan Lawler, who is their number 1 prospect. He's the number 3 shortstop prospect in baseball, and he's the number 10 overall prospect in baseball. He was one of their first-round picks in 2021, very early in that draft, and he's been really good in the minors, power, speed, and he plays a pretty good shortstop. This is somebody who I've been really hyped about for a while. I just think he's going to be really legit. I think he shows great tools all around, like really good discipline, really good athletic tools as well in the power and speed departments. And he recently got called up to AAA, and in 16 games at AAA, he had a 1,050 OPS. Started off the year pretty cold at AA, but he's been incredible in the second half. And I'm really excited to see what he can do. Maybe he won't set the world on fire right off the bat, but I think this is a guy who, when all is said and done for his career, is going to be looked at as one of the best Diamondbacks of all time if he stays there for a long time. But yeah, I'm really excited about this one. And clearly the prospect evaluators agree.
Mm-hmm. Pretty interesting that these two are the big call-ups, because Luke Little, while he made his debut, the Diamondbacks' next series is in Chicago. So we could potentially see these two even face off within the next coming days, which would be pretty cool. Luke Little, one thing that I didn't put in there, talk about him. If you have not seen him or know anything about him, he throws hard. He's lefty. He's 6'8". He's gigantic.
Nice.
And he throws pretty wicked sweeper. But Jordan Lawler, I think he's obviously got the prospect pedigree. He's going to be very, very good. And the Diamondbacks are going to be an exciting young team. And this is going to be pretty cool to see these young guys potentially face off in these next couple games. It'll be a weekend series, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, obviously. 4-game series with some potential huge wild card implications. We just talked about that. So hopefully that can be pretty fun. And we can talk about some milestones and records now. And I will let you run away with this one. Talk about it.
Thank you. Yeah, this is just some things that I compiled over the last week. I did not create these stats. These are taken from many different guys on Twitter. But yeah, we saw some big milestones and records be reached over the past week. First one, Bryce Harper became the 8th player ever with 300 or more home runs, 900 or more walks, and a 140 OPS plus or better through his age 30 season. The other 7 players, all Hall of Famers except for 2 who have yet to reach eligibility: Mike Trout, Albert Pujols, Eddie Matthews, Mickey Mantle, Mel Ott, Jimmy Fox, and Babe Ruth. Bryce Harper clearly on a pace to be an inner circle Hall of Famer.
Definitely. It's weird for Bryce Harper because it feels like nobody has like a middle of the road opinion on Bryce Harper. It's either Bryce Harper is most likely going to be in the Hall of Fame or Bryce Harper is extremely overrated. I'm typically towing the line of this guy's one of the best baseball players.
I switched over a few years ago once he became underrated.
Yeah, I think he's definitely got potential to be an inner circle Hall of Famer. He's one of the best baseball players, at least of this current generation. I'm a huge Bryce Harper fan, and I'm glad that I get to watch him play baseball. That guy is excellent.
Next milestone we have is Aaron Judge reaching the 250 home run threshold, and he did so in the fewest games ever. The previous record holders, Albert Pujols was at 933 games. Harmon Killebrew was at 905 games to 250 home runs. Ralph Kiner was at 871. And the previous record holder, Ryan Howard, got to 250 home runs in 855 games. Aaron Judge really blew them out of the water there. He's a little older than those guys were, so probably not on his pace, probably not on pace to break the all-time home run record. But I think this is a guy that easily gets to 500 home runs, and maybe he'll do so faster than anybody else in terms of games played.
I think he could. And it's a shame we didn't get a full season out of him, because the pace he's been on, he would have hit 60 home runs again. He would have been close to 60 again. And that's just outrageous. Mm-hmm. The pace that he can set. It's just keeping Aaron Judge healthy, because he's just such a joy to watch play baseball. And even if you're like a Yankees hater, it's like you have to really kind of respect what Judge does for them, and for baseball in general. He's a great player. I think he could easily get to 500 if he can actually just stay healthy.
Yeah. And then Davis Schneider had a really hot start to his career. He got really hot in his first few games, then cooled down a bit, and then wasn't playing. And then he got back in the lineup with Bo Bichette hitting the IL, Matt Chapman hitting the IL. So Schneider has gotten a ton of opportunity and has really done well. Through his first 15 games, he set the record for the highest OPS by any player in the modern era at 1.379, 1,379 OPS. Really cool from Davis Schneider. How does it feel to have somebody with your name doing so well in baseball?
Awesome. My namesake is doing the most, and I can get behind it. He also has the sweet glasses and the excellent mustache. I'm glad
just like me.
Yeah, the GOAT, if you will. So yeah, I'm glad that he's really doing the thing for the Blue Jays.
Yeah. And then elsewhere in the AL East, the Orioles continue to not lose. They have the longest streak ever of consecutive series of more than one game without being swept in AL history, with 84. I think they're well on their way to setting the major league record there. They have not been swept in a series of 2 games or more in ever since Adley Rutschman started playing on their team.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
It is wild.
That's awesome.
They've been really incredible, and I think this stat really like encapsulates just like how consistent they've been at not losing.
Adley Rutschman, that's really, really cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's a big one. And then lastly, we'll wrap up also in the AL East. Actually, all of these came from the AL East except for Bryce, who's in the NL East. But Giancarlo Stanton joined the 400 home run club. Both his 300th and 400th home runs came against the Tigers. So that's an extra fun fact there. But yeah, Giancarlo Stanton now just 100 home runs shy from 500 home runs. That's basically a lock to get you in the Hall of Fame. Do you think he gets there?
No, I don't.
I really hope he does.
I hope he does, but I just don't think he will. He has to DH, and he's sort of waning it, like in his hitting ability too.
Yeah,
it just sort of feels like he's going to end up not like as bad as like Pujols got, but I just don't think that he's really going to be the same. Seeing the clips of him trying to run the bases is sort of sad. It's so slow, and it's almost kind of sad. It's like, okay,
well,
you're watching a man.
It's hard to tell why he's doing it.
I don't know. There is one more record that I want to add in this because it's extremely new. And it goes to show just how bad the Rangers pitching has been and just how good the Astros have been this season, or this series. The Houston Astros are the first team in Major League Baseball history to record 50 hits and 16 home runs in a 3-game series.
Ooh,
they're beating the hell out of the Rangers.
They hit like 7 home runs yesterday.
Yeah, they have 16 in 3 games and
that's
50
wild.
Hits. It's more. I think it's more than that. They're just trash canning the Rangers.
That is crazy. But yeah, that's it's the notable milestones and records from the past week. We'll talk about awards next week. Forgot that we were due for a August month in review. So we'll do our early awards check-in next week. So that's something to look forward to.
Definitely. And since we're going to do that next week, that is going to end all of what we have, except for one last thing. It's free baseball. We always end it with bringing the closer. Well, we usually end it with bringing the closer. We've had some where we kind of slacked on it, but I think it's high time to bring in the closer.
High time, 420. Yeah, this week we've got Tim Burke, who had an 8-year career from 1985 to 1992, during which he pitched for the Expos, the Mets, and the Yankees. He was drafted by the Pirates in the second round of the 1980 draft and was traded to the Yankees in December of 1982, and then was traded again to the Expos in December of 1983. He debuted for the Expos in April of 1985 versus the Reds. He tossed 2 1/3 innings, allowing 2 hits, 1 run, and 3 walks while striking out 1. In his debut campaign, he threw a career-high 120 1/3 innings with a career-high 87 strikeouts. He also posted a 2.39 ERA, a 1.08 whip, and 8 saves, and then followed it up with another sub-3 ERA campaign across more than 100 innings in 1986. Then in 1987, Burke had the best year of his career. He tossed 91 innings with a career best 1.19 ERA, a career best 0.89 whip, and 18 saves. Then he took a step back in 1988, but still saved 18 games with a 3.40 ERA, and then was finally recognized for his efforts as one of the better relievers in baseball in 1989. That year, he pitched to a 2.55 ERA with a 1.06 whip and a career-high 28 saves, and he earned his first and only All-Star appearance that year. And 1990 marked his final full season with Montreal, and he made the most of it. He had a 2.52 ERA and 20 more saves that year. In 1991, he was traded mid-season to the Mets, where he improved his ERA with the Expos by 1.36 runs. He had an ERA under 3 with the Mets after having an ERA over 4 with the Expos. And then after struggling early with the Mets in 1992, he was traded again midseason, this time to the Yankees, and he once again improved his ERA, this time by 2.49 runs. It was a dramatic jump there. I think he went from 3.75, or it was 3.25 to 5.74, something like that. But that would wrap up his career at the age of 33. Little early, but that's all right. He ended his career with 12.1 Baseball Reference WAR across 699 1/3 innings with 444 strikeouts, a 2.72 ERA, a 1.21 whip, and 102 saves, which is tied for 159th on the all-time saves leaderboard. His career ERA of 2.72 is lower than all Hall of Fame relief pitchers other than Mariano Rivera and Hoyt Wilhelm. And nobody be talking about Tim Burke.
Yep. I could not find it literally.
There's nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing.
He's a guy.
Yeah, the pictures of him on his baseball cards, his hats are very big. They're extremely tall. It looks like he's wearing one of the comically oversized trucker hats.
Nice.
Sick. That's all we have for this episode of Free Baseball. It's episode number 73. Join us next season, I was gonna say next season. No, don't do that. Next week.
See you next year.
So yeah, see you later. See you later, bozo. Join us next week for episode number 74. We're going to talk about some early award check-ins and whatever happens from now until then. As always, my name is Davis Bird. You can follow me on my twitter.com account. It's not X. It's stupid. On Twitter at DVSBird. It's on the screen. You can follow Jake Crumpler at Jake Crumpler. Go read all the stuff he writes on the multitude of sites that he writes for. We already mentioned the one, which is
pitcherlist.com, and I write for baseballhq.com, but all of my work can be found on crumplerbaseball.com. You'll also find my podcasts there. The First Pitch podcast, which I do the weekend editions of, it's a daily podcast, and also the In the Pen podcast, which is a podcast focused solely on relief pitchers that comes out every Friday morning.
Yeah, that's really great baseball content. You should definitely check it out. If you like our podcast, you'll definitely like reading all of that stuff and all the articles at Pitcher List. If you play fantasy baseball, they're a godsend. And if you want to read articles from the Athletes Hub, I would highly recommend it. It's they're fan-centric articles, obviously made by fans of the sports that you are going to consume. I think recently there was a fantasy baseball primer, or a fantasy football primer, not fantasy baseball. A little late for that now. It's just fantasy football primer and rankings that have come out recently. Content is kind of coming out, trickling very incrementally. We need to pick it up a little bit, but check out our stuff. It's made by fans. They're pretty simple, digestible reads. Won't take you that long to do it. Supports us, helps us out a lot. You can follow their Twitter account also at Athletes Hub on Twitter. Other than that, I don't really have anything else to add, but join us next week and see ya.